and welcome to Wild Ones podcast. We are your hosts. My name's Gillian.
And my name's Alecia. I apologise this week that I sound a little bit croaky, but I have had the flu again. I literally have been ill for the whole of December and January. I just can't get rid of it.
Nothing to do with those espresso martinis.
No, it was nothing to do with the espresso martinis.
She truly is ill, to be fair.
We're actually in the wrong place for me to be ill as well, because today we are at the Royal Society for Medicine in London, and I really don't want to be bringing germs here because some of the lead of all sort of medical research is literally based here. Like the most important people in medicine are based here, and they really don't need me to bring my germs here.
That said, you're also in the right place because you might be able to get some drugs.
Tea tree oil or something. We digress. This week we have been lucky enough to be invited by the Encephalitis Society, which is a charity that's really, really close to my heart after almost losing my son when he was 3.5 to encephalitis, which is a brain injury that you will find more out about as you listen to the podcast.
Yeah, we've been joined by Dr. Ava Easton today, who is the CEO of the Encephalitis Society. So she really is
awesome,
big floss.
Isn't she?
Yeah, she's really great.
She's been an incredible guest. I have known Ava for a couple of years, and literally what she doesn't know about this particular disease is not worth knowing. She's just the most warm and kind-hearted person ever as well.
She probably knows more than anyone in the world. She is like the world leader for this condition, isn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So sit back, enjoy. It all sounds very depressing at the minute. We're not as cheerful as we usually are, but it's quite an emotive subject. Yeah. We even had a little tear, didn't we, at the end?
We did. We both had a tear. And we should say as well, she's not really a typical podcast guest, but this is a special based on the fact that Alicia's son Ethan had encephalitis, as she said, when he was 3 years old, and because it's Encephalitis Day on the 22nd of February. Yeah. So we thought we would come here to the Royal Society of Medicine.
And they made me an ambassador as well, and I'm so proud because they've supported me for so many years, and now it's my turn to give back and support them. So sit back, grab your brew, your gin, your coffee, your tea, whatever your tipple is this week. We're on the water today because we are travelling, so very sensible. Enjoy, and please have a look at the Encephalitis Society on all social media platforms, and enjoy the episode.
Today we are joined by Ava Easton. Hello, Ava.
Hello.
I got really worried then that I'd actually said your name wrong, so I'm glad that I got that right straight away. Dr. Ava Easton, yes.
Yes.
I apologise.
Ava is the boss at the Encephalitis Society. Your official title is Chief Executive Officer?
That's right. Very posh.
We're really lucky to be speaking to Ava today. When my son was 3.5 years old, he's now 15, he contracted a virus that resulted in him having encephalitis. He had an autoimmune encephalitis called acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, or A.D.E.M for short. And when Ethan was in hospital, I very luckily had a friend who did a bit of research, found the Encephalitis Society for me, and reached out to them, and they sent me an information booklet, and I can credit the Encephalitis Society with helping me keep my sanity through a time where I nearly lost my child to a very, 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 I want to say dangerous brain injury, because so many people survive encephalitis, but so many survivors come out of the other side of it with long-lasting, life-impacting brain injury. So we're here today to talk to Ava about what the Encephalitis Society does, what Ava does within that, and then the wonderful World Encephalitis Day.
Yeah. And what we should say is that despite the green screen, we're not actually in our usual place. We haven't said we're at the Royal Society of Medicine in London.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
So, talk us through just the basics of what the Encephalitis Society does first.
The Encephalitis Society operates in three primary ways: providing support and information for patients that have been affected, for family members, for those that are left bereaved by the condition, but also for professionals that are supporting them. And our website has been hailed as one of the most, well, probably the most comprehensive resource on encephalitis information in the world. The second area that we touched upon earlier, which was awareness, and our primary campaign for that is World Encephalitis Day, which I know we're going to talk a bit more about later on. So raising awareness of the condition, because as we know, 8 out of 10 people have often not heard of this condition until it affects their family.
Yeah.
And the final area is research. So we collaborate on most encephalitis studies around the world, particularly in the UK and the US. And we provide some funding in some cases for PhD fellows and seed funding for people who've got big ideas for research but need a little bit of money just to get it off the ground, and then to convince the bigger funders to give them the big bucks. And so we help in that way.
So literally, I mean, so many charities and organisations out there just specialise in one area, but the Encephalitis Society is literally like one great big hub.
Well, I think we feel morally bound in some ways, because we're the only resource of our kind delivering these kind of services in the world, and so I think we feel that we've got a responsibility to deliver what we can where we can. And of course, you know, we've accrued now 25 years experience between me and my team. Between us we've got 100 years experience, but we've been going for 25 years now, so I think we feel we've got a lot to offer.
So I'm going to be the simple person. Not always the simple person, but I'm definitely going to be the simple person today. Alicia's been affected by encephalitis. I have not, other than knowing Alecia and her son Ethan. What is encephalitis? Who does it affect? What happens? How do you get diagnosed?
Okay.
Tell us about
Lots of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So encephalitis, first of all, simply means inflammation of the brain. And it's caused in one of two ways, either by an infection breaching the blood-brain barrier, which is something that we have that's meant to keep bugs out of the brain. And in some cases, ordinary everyday infections that most people will be familiar with, such as the flu, measles, the herpes simplex virus, which is the cold sore virus. In some cases, these infections breach the blood-brain barrier and they mount a direct infectious attack on the brain. So some people may be more familiar with meningitis, for example, and that's where infection attacks the lining of the brain. So encephalitis is an attack on the brain itself. So infection can cause an encephalitis, and then the other way is through a person's own immune system going wrong. And earlier Alecia talked about an infection and the immune system being involved in Ethan's case, and that was because he'd had an infection circulating in his system. His immune system had geared itself up to go and fight this perceived invader, but attacked the brain in error. So in some cases you've got the two things going on. But in most cases, it's either through infection or by a person's own immune system going wrong.
Right, okay. And does it usually can it affect anyone of any age?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
There is a suggestion that there is a predominance in the young and the elderly, and that's because you've got immune systems that are not fully formed yet, and immune systems in older people, of course, that are breaking down and becoming weaker, as you said. But yes, it affects any age, any gender.
Yeah, the doctor, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember the consultant at Bristol Royal Children's Hospital who looked after Ethan so well. He explained to me, specifically with Ethan's encephalitis, that they tested for many different viruses and it wasn't any of the viruses that they were aware of that caused his immune system to create, what he explained it like creating an army, and instead of creating an equal amount, the army as the immune system almost doubled in numbers too much, and like you had lots and lots of soldiers and they didn't know what to do, so they all started fighting each other.
I think that's a great analogy.
And that
You
kind
can
of
use that.
yeah, that's yours to keep.
I'll take it, thank you.
It worked for me because I think at the time I was really struggling as a parent to understand, like you said, lots of people have heard of meningitis, and that was actually the first thing that the hospital tested for when he was first admitted at Musgrove Park Hospital in Taunton, and they thought immediately it was meningitis, and they performed a lumbar puncture, understood that there was something wrong but just weren't sure what was going wrong, and that's when he was blue lighted up to Bristol with seizure after seizure after seizure, and lost full function of all of his body, but at the same time you could see that he could understand because he was almost communicating with his eyes, so he could hear and he could feel, but was having repeated seizures all the time. They actually had to tie him up to the bed in the back of the ambulance really tight, stop him coming off.
Ethan was 3 at the time.
Yeah, he was 3.5. And actually, it's really, really bizarre that you will meet somebody else that has come into contact with somebody with encephalitis, because it's rare, or it's rare that people talk about it.
I was going to ask, how rare is it? How many people are affected by encephalitis in the UK?
It's a great question. So rare is banned in our office. I think Alicia's right when she says, it's rare that people talk about it, and I think that's right. But in comparison to other comparable neurological conditions, encephalitis has a higher incidence than motor neurone disease, than multiple sclerosis in many countries, than bacterial meningitis, and more than cerebral palsy. And I just caveat in many countries, because things like meningitis can have a high prevalence in sub-Saharan Africa, and multiple sclerosis has a high prevalence in the US. But those exclusions aside, this has a higher incidence than those conditions.
Do you know how many people are affected in the UK a year? Do you know know numbers?
We do have numbers. We do have some numbers. There's a lot of problem with the data at the moment. We think that there's around about 6,000 people affected every year in the United Kingdom. Worldwide, the estimate is around about 500,000, but actually we know it's a lot more than that. And so we're about to conduct a piece of work at the moment, unpicking global incidence in more detail. It's not going to be perfect, because unfortunately the way that people collect data, the way that they process data are not consistent across all countries, and of course some countries don't collect data. And of course there are some forms of encephalitis that occur in other countries that don't occur in some of the Western countries. So, for example, some of the types of encephalitis that are vaccine preventable, like
Japanese encephalitis,
rabies, tick-borne encephalitis, all of those. And of course, we're seeing, unfortunately, this rise of vaccine hesitancy around the world. Measles is one of the biggest killers of children, and so people having their MMR is absolutely imperative, because these children, when they die of measles, will in many cases die of a measles encephalitis. And I think we've forgotten how brutal some of these childhood infections are.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a difficult thing to talk about, because it's very topical, and there are people that feel very strongly about it. But actually, from a personal perspective, I feel incredibly strongly about people being vaccinated. And I've got no shame in sharing my personal opinion.
I feel exactly the same.
Really, really important that children can't fight for themselves. You wouldn't ask your child to drive a car or to walk themselves to school. How can you possibly put them around, outside of your bubble of your house, and expect them to fight off viruses and germs if you don't equip them with the safety in order to be able to do that? You wouldn't get in the car and not.
We're not in medieval times anymore either. The science is there and it's proven. So as far as I'm concerned, and it's interesting that you said rare is banned. I don't want to go too off piece, but we spoke in our first episode. My sister had a little boy with spinal muscular atrophy, and they obviously, well, not obviously, but lots of people say that's rare, but it's actually not that rare. It does affect lots of babies, especially and in the UK every year, so it's not rare, and it's almost annoying that people say it's rare, because you're trying to talk about it and raise awareness, and it's not as rare as people think at all, and clearly encephalitis isn't.
And do you know what, the more that you say something's rare, the less money people will give you for the condition. That's primarily why it's banned as well, because we have to we start every year with 0 pence as a charity. And I have to raise £1 million every year from nothing. I've got no product to sell. A lot of our work is explaining to people, and a lot of these things are myths that have developed over years. So I think we feel some responsibility to say, well, actually, it really isn't rare, and there's lots of money being ploughed into other neurological conditions, which, as I said to you, perhaps have a lower incidence, and so they should. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but I think we'd like a fair bite at the cherry too.
And I think it's really important that people understand that it's one of those things that actually has a mortality rate, and not only does it have a mortality rate, but for the survivors, so many people, like I said at the very beginning, have life-changing side effects. It's bizarre that we're here at the same time. I was with a colleague from the Heist last night doing some work, and actually he had his brother-in-law had encephalitis.
Wow.
And he went from being a very fit, slim, healthy, athletic young man to now living in full-time care, very overweight and immobile because of the medication that he's on, and constantly has seizures, so rarely leaves the house. And that was from encephalitis.
Yeah.
So actually,
I was actually surprised. Did you? I'm assuming that you knew that before, but when he said that to us about his brother-in-law, I thought, oh my goodness, you didn't know?
No.
Because when you said that we were coming here, and he said, "Oh, encephalitis is such a cruel condition," I thought, "Oh, he must know from you speaking about Ethan." And then he went on to say about his brother-in-law. And I thought, God.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, he's not a stranger to me. We've known each other for 2 years because we worked together. But it's really bizarre that you open up this conversation with people and you have a dialogue about these things, and so many people will actually go, "Do you know what? I do know somebody that's affected."
Right.
But bringing it back round to encephalitis, I think it's also really important to acknowledge that across the world, my son was almost misdiagnosed, and that was in the UK, in our wonderful NHS. So actually, there must be so many people across the world that begin to show symptoms of some kind of brain inflammation or brain damage, and along with a viral infection, and actually they aren't treated quickly enough, and therefore, because very little is known about encephalitis in certain areas of the world, they're probably being either misdiagnosed or not treated quickly enough.
Yeah, you raised some important points. As you said, mortality or the death rate following encephalitis can be up to 30%, depending on the cause. And I think you're right. I think we've got a bit better at diagnosing infectious types of encephalitis, particularly in the Western world, but you're right to make the point that, I mean, currently our charity, the Encephalitis Society, is currently working on a £2.2 million study funded by the NIHR with our colleagues at the University of Liverpool, and we're looking at diagnosis and treatment in Malawi, India and Brazil, so low to middle income countries, to see how we can help improve those pathways. But in addition, a lot of the causes of encephalitis we didn't know about until around about 2006, when we suddenly became better able to diagnose some of the autoimmune causes. And so there's a great book called Brain on Fire by one of our ambassadors, Susanna Cahalan, and she had a form of autoimmune encephalitis called anti-NMDA receptor. And so you're right, I mean, some of these forms that once upon a time we weren't diagnosing because we didn't know that they existed, and then we've got better at diagnosing. One does have to wonder how many patients had gone before. I just heard a very interesting case over this last couple of weeks, which, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and so it takes a bit to shock me these days, but this has been diagnosed, I think, for the last 6 years with motor neurone disease. And he didn't have motor neurone disease at all. He had a form of encephalitis caused by something we call Caspar-2. And so this is a form of encephalitis that, if diagnosed early, can be treated well. And at the moment, I'm reaching out to her to try and understand better what's happened, but also where he is in his journey now, and whether, you know, what the level of damage is that's occurred over that period of time that could have been prevented.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So,
you say you've been in this for a long time.
Yeah.
How did encephalitis become your specialist subject?
It's a great question, and one that people always ask me, and I always feel guilty answering it, because it started as a job that was advertised, and that was it. I've got no personal affinity with the condition. At the time, they'd got they'd been in operation about 5 years, so I've been specialising for 21 years now, and they'd got their first, I think what was then the National Lottery, they'd got a grant for someone to come in and set up some of the patient support services. I applied for the job, got it, but then, you know, within 6 months my life changed completely, working with these patients and their families, and I don't know why, but I found some kind of affinity, and it was like I'd come home. I just, that was my vocation in life, and then it became all-consuming.
I've got goosebumps. I just find that so inspirational. and having,
now you're the CEO.
I know. You know, they'll give anybody a job these days, right?
Who is this woman? Doctor? Are you? So we were saying this morning, doctor.
Yeah.
Could you be a GP type doctor,
No.
or are you a doctor in?
I'm a research doctor.
Research doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't show you any ailments.
Don't do that.
Yeah, can I just show you something?
I think my expertise is considered to be in patient outcomes, their quality of life, and then also another passion that developed out of this, which is narrative medicine, which is about how the power of the patient's story can be so informative for clinicians.
You say that about but Brain on Fire is one of the best books I've ever read.
You don't even have to care about encephalitis, right?
No.
It's an interesting book anyway.
Yeah, I would recommend that anyone read that.
Do you have a copy?
It's such a good book. I have got a copy.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll have it.
If anyone else needs to get a copy, they are available on Amazon, because I think that's where I got mine. So have a look for Brain on Fire. It's an incredible read. Even if you're not interested in brain injury, just definitely have a read.
I think we have some signed copies available through the Society's website, I think, or
even
encephalitis.info.
Yeah, and speaking of ambassadors, I am honoured that you asked me last year to become an ambassador. Thank you.
Well done.
And hopefully we'll be getting involved in some crazy fundraising over the next sort of few years and onwards.
Yeah.
Which is in the planning at the moment. So we watch this space.
That is exciting.
I think we've already cornered you, haven't you, to help us with as a volunteer to help us. Now that the society is expanding, we're working in all these different countries around the world. So Malawi, I'm in Brazil, and Zambia again later this year. So Alecia's coming on board to help us look at travel risk and how we can make sure we keep all of us safe whilst we're away.
For those who don't know, after I left the police, I re-qualified as a security risk management specialist, and travel is my passion. So I find out lots of things about where is safe to travel and write mitigation strategies on how not to get hurt doing that. And if I can deliver that to people to help them, who better than the Encephalitis Society, so that you can go and deliver these wonderful things and stay safe, because we need you.
Yeah, I know, right? So, and we're really lucky. One of our eminent neurologists, Mark, is going to join our working subcommittee, and Mark was actually personally involved in an incident in Mozambique when the floods hit in Vera, and so he's one of our neurologists, but for 3 days he was missing, and we didn't know if he was okay or not.
Yeah.
And so he's got a personal interest in this, and so I think between the three of us we'll make it a good job at looking what our risk is and how we minimise it.
Absolutely. Your other ambassadors, you've got some other cracking ambassadors, haven't you?
Yeah, we do. So we love all of our ambassadors. We've got, so our first ambassador was Matthew Bowes, who used to be in Emmerdale. He's an incredible actor, and I learned so much from hooking up with Matthew in those early days. He's now had 2 friends affected by the condition. And so I learnt so much from him back in the day, and Matthew's been with us, I don't know now, maybe 12 years. I learnt so much from him about dealing with the press and lots of things back in those early days. And then shortly after that, Rebecca Adlington, who's the quadruple, I don't know, she's got so many medals, I don't know how many, but who did double gold in the Beijing Olympics in 2008. And there was an interesting story to that, because we got, I think it was a check in the post or something from a cooking show to do with Rebecca, and I was like, why would they send us some money? So we Googled it, and then suddenly realised that Rebecca's sister Laura had been affected by the condition. So I reached out to them, and of course, you know, all you famous people have all these gatekeepers and what have you, and they were like, no, go away. But I think word must have got through to Becky, because a few weeks later they came back and said she'd like to meet, and we went out for lunch.
It's Twitter. Ava is incredible on Twitter. So not only does she never sleep, because she literally works 24/7, and practically lives in the Royal Society for Medicine, or travels all across the world, literally changing people's lives due to encephalitis, but she also rules on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
@Encephalitis Ava. So yeah.
Yeah, and not only do you tweet, but the tweets are engaging and funny, and you respond to people, and you are informative. So yeah, Twitter
Thank
queen.
you.
I bet it was Twitter.
No, it genuinely wasn't. I don't know. So I'm not even sure I had a Twitter feed back then, but somehow Becky came on board, and she's been absolute legend. In fact, last year, I think you were with us, Alecia, at the awards ceremony in London when she won a highly commended.
Love you anyway.
We do, and I'm really sorry.
So World Encephalitis Day, 22nd of February this year.
Yes.
Hashtag WED. Is it going to be WD20?
So they usually use, what do they use? No, actually...
Red for Wed?
Yeah, hashtag Red for Wed with the number 4, and hashtag World Encephalitis Day, I think, is what we've honed it down to now.
Red for Wed, does that mean we have to wear red?
Yes.
So you have to wear red on World Encephalitis Day.
I can do that.
We should have worn red today, really, but we didn't. I mean, we'd have, yeah. We will do that.
But we didn't.
I think we are hoping that you will be listening to this episode around and about the time of World Encephalitis Day. If you're listening to it before, please wear red on World Encephalitis Day, the 22nd of February, and explain to everybody why you're doing it. If you have social media, hashtag World Encephalitis Day.
Take selfies.
Yeah.
Post it on your social. Yeah.
Is it the 22nd of February every year?
Yes, it is.
So if you're listening next year, the year after, obviously our podcasts are going to live on.
Yeah.
22nd of February every year.
There's lots of resources. People can go to worldencephalitisday.org. There's lots of resources to download there, lots of inspirational ways to get involved. And of course, we're launching, in fact, I think we have just launched our very famous app, Brainwalk, which has won many awards. So this is where people can get walking around the world when they get to certain... So it basically calculates, it's an app you download, calculates your steps either from your phone or from your Fitbit or something, and then you can help us walk the... I think it's something like 222 million miles we've got to do this year or something. And when you get to various checkpoints around the world, then a webinar or a podcast will open up telling you more about encephalitis in that part of the world.
Cool. Here's a great podcast that you should be putting on
Should
there.
be on there, right? Brainwalk.
Yeah, so other ways to fundraise, for example, I did the Great London 10K, God, that was about 8 years ago now, with my friend Polly. So I think we fundraised for the Encephalitis Society, and we did a 10K in London. There's loads of different ways that you can fundraise. You could just have a coffee morning, or if you usually buy a coffee a couple of days a week, just put £2 in a pot until you've done it for a month, and then just donate online. There are so many ways to donate. You will be making a huge difference, and you will, if you reach out to your friends and family again via social media, you'd be surprised at how many people you know have been affected by encephalitis, or sadly people that could in the future become infected, and you will need and cherish the support of Ava and her incredible team. She's got a great team, haven't you?
Yeah, and there's only 12 of us, but we, world domination. There's only us sorting things out around the world, but so yeah, and we operate.
That's crazy.
I know, we operate from a small base in North Yorkshire. So it is crazy, but we do incredible work. We've won, I think, 15 industry awards now for our work, and I think it is truly life-saving and life-changing. And I think, as you said, if people want to come and look at our Twitter feeds, you'll see some of the things that people say to us, and we're just incredibly grateful to have their support. And I think the whole team, particularly myself, just feel privileged to get out of bed every morning and go to a job that we love, and that we can make a difference.
I think likening, if I was to give another analogy to the support that I've had from the Encephalitis Society as a parent who almost lost a child, it would be like going into a supermarket where all the products were in exactly the same boxes and they were all blank, and you wouldn't know what to get. So you'd be shopping blind and you wouldn't have a clue. And you were that light in the dark for me, where I did not understand what was going on. The consultants were few and far between in terms of their specialities within the hospital. So the one consultant that could help us was helping loads of other people all across the Bristol region and other regions. So didn't have the time to explain, and the nurses didn't really understand. We were the only family on the ward at the time with a child with encephalitis. So if my friend hadn't reached out to you, I'd have been in that supermarket blind. So to have all of that information provided to me in a booklet where everything made sense, was like somebody, just taking your hand and going, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
This is what it is, and we will be with you every step of the way.
Yeah.
And for that, as a parent, I can't thank you and your team enough.
No, it's what we're here for. But I mean, we recognise where you were. For people that are in that position, it's a lonely, scary place.
Yeah.
That's our job, and we're very privileged to do it.
Julian's getting upset.
Oh.
Doesn't take much.
No,
Okay,
I'm welling up as well. I think the best thing to do to look to the future is for us to figure out ways to support you and ways for our listeners to support you as well.
Well, we deeply appreciate any support that anybody can offer us.
Yeah, even if it's wearing your red t-shirts on World Encephalitis Day, throwing a few retweets out there, or an Instagram follow, a Facebook follow, just to help spread the word so that there are people out there that can hear about the Encephalitis Society and help everybody and all the families that are suffering.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic.
Encephalitis.info and worldencephalitisday.org, please. Thank
22nd February.
Yeah, 22nd February.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for having us here in this lovely building.
Thank you.
We feel
for
very
coming.
privileged to be here.
No, thank you for having us, and thanks for helping us raise awareness.
Thank you. So we hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much to the Royal Society of Medicine for having us and hosting us here.
Yep, and to the Encephalitis Society and to Dr. Ava Easton for giving us some time to have a chat on this otherwise rainy, foggy morning in London.
Yeah, please check out us on social media, them on social media. If you're listening, don't forget to go and have a look at the YouTube channel where you can see our lovely faces and see Ava as well and see us getting all teary-eyed. Thank you so much. Tune in for another episode next week.